Hello, it's Patriotic Christian here. Today I want to talk about something that is also very misunderstood, and that is money. So the first thing I'd like to say about money that is commonly misunderstood is that money is not wealth. And I know it, to those of you who know better, it seems like a no-brainer, but there's a lot of misinformation around there, and people think that if we just print more money, that's the same as creating wealth, and it's not. So that's what I'm going to be explaining here today. So to start with, going to use illustrations, which I hope are helpful. So I got a money sign here, crossed out, does not equal wealth. And it's very important that that is understood, but I'm going to go into more detail and explain that, because what money is currency. And what currency is simply, a store of value. So, here in the next, I've got wealth is valuable, because in order to understand why money is not wealth, you got to understand what real wealth is. And so to start with, wealth is anything of value. And some things might be valuable to one person and not to another, but as long as it has value to someone, then that constitutes wealth. And I will go into more detail about that. But what money is as currency is a convenience. It's a way for us to trade wealth. And it's also a way for us to store wealth. You can have money in the bank, so to speak, and as long as the money is able to be exchanged for anything of value, then it's a way of storing your wealth, without having the inconvenience of, building a big fortification at your house in order to store all of your stuff. So I have another diagram that I hope will be much more helpful in explaining it. So as some examples of wealth, I have livestock, I have produce, and tools. Because all of these things are valuable. A farmer might grow a crop, for example, and the crop is valuable because everybody needs to eat, right? So it's something that's always in demand. People see value in being able to eat and stay alive, right? Obviously. But this is an example of a consumable wealth. Okay, so it's wealth that you must constantly create in order to constantly be consuming it. It doesn't change that it's valuable or that it's necessary. It's just a simple fact that some forms of wealth, don't last forever. They get consumed. And so wealth creation is actually a very important part of maintaining wealth, because if you don't constantly keep creating it, then eventually you end up with a lot less of it. Now, just as an example of how a simple economy might work, if you have a farmer that grows a crop, okay, so he's growing wheat, for example, someone might, over here, they might not be a farmer, but maybe they make tools, okay, and they can trade some of their tools that they make to the farmer, because the tool maker needs to eat too. So he sees value in the food, but unlike the farmer, he probably doesn't have a huge grain silo to be able to store tons and tons of grain for the winter and stuff. So he may not be interested in buying as much produce as the farmer can produce, right? So he's probably only interested in smaller amounts at a time. Now the farmer, on the other hand, he sees value in the tools, and he's willing to trade, some of his crop for tools, because the tools help his efficiency, make his life easier and things. But he has a very limited use for the tools, right? I mean, once he has the tools that he needs, barring them breaking and wearing out and needing replaced, he doesn't really need to keep buying tools. And so the tool maker would run into a little bit of a problem, because if he can't constantly keep exchanging the tools that he's manufacturing for food, which he needs to eat, then, it's a little bit of a problem. So he's going to have to constantly go out and find other farmers he can trade with, and so on. But at some point, he's going to reach a sort of downturn in his business because he's already sold tools to everyone in town. And if he's going to try and sell tools in another town, that means competing with someone else. And there's all kinds of problems and logistical issues that he's going to run into with that. Now, another example of wealth would be something like livestock. And livestock is an example of multiplying wealth because, as long as you keep, taking care of them and properly cultivate them, breed them, and so on, your wealth will multiply. And this is natural. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, a way of multiplying wealth. And as long as you're able to feed them and you're able to, keep breeding them, and, at some point you're going to need a market for them because you might not, as much as we might like meat, we probably don't want to eat meat all the time. So he's probably going to want to trade with the farmer, and probably the tool maker might find certain tools helpful, for digging wells, and who knows. Okay, but all of these systems run into problems when they're trading. The rancher who's raising livestock is probably not interested in trading a lot of livestock for a lot of crops. The farmer needs to be able to get rid of large portions of grain, and he can't trade it to the tool maker because the tool maker doesn't have a use for that much grain, doesn't have a place to store it. And he can't trade it to the rancher because the rancher, same problem, doesn't have that. But the rancher has an abundance of livestock and he needs to get rid of some of them because he's running out of land to graze them on, or whatever the reason. And he has a limited use for tools and a limited use for grain because he just doesn't eat that much grain. So there's a little bit of a problem in this kind of economy. And this is more of like what you would call a bartering system. Okay? So this is where money comes in. Money becomes the currency for exchange. Okay? Because once you introduce money to the system, then the tool maker can sell tools to the farmer and to the rancher for money. And whenever the tool maker wants to buy meat or food or grain, he can pay money, right? And they can buy it in the amounts they want. And when it comes to storing it, the tool maker, instead of having a whole, workshop full of excess tools in stock, he could just have money in the bank, right? And instead of the tools being his accumulation of wealth, he can have money in the bank and just sell the tools, right? And same with the farmer. The farmer doesn't need to have endless grain silos to store all of their excess wealth for trading. They can sell it on the market and have money in the bank. Same thing with the rancher. They can sell their livestock to anyone inside or outside of town, and they don't need to have a huge, system to protect their accumulation of wealth because it's all stored up in a currency. So the money is being useful because it's a store of wealth, but its value is only in what it can purchase from real wealth. And so this is when we get into the concept of inflation. So, because this is one of the problems with money, if it's not handled correctly. So if you have, for example here, if you had, $100 equal, if this is the value for one sheep, so to speak, right? That would be the value. Well, if you suddenly created a whole bunch of more money and it just kind of flooded the market and there's all this excess money floating around, then people would be willing to trade more of the money for one sheep. And so you could end up inflating the price to $200 for just one sheep, whereas just a short time ago it was only $100. Now this is, perhaps misunderstood as to how unjust inflation really is, because when you do inflate currency like this, it's a way of stealing from someone else. Because when if, for example, you started printing more money and dumping this on the market to purchase goods, the value of the money goes down, but you benefit because you're the one creating the money and you're acquiring things of true value. And to you, it doesn't matter that the value of the currency is going down because you're able to acquire things with it. But to the rancher, the farmer, and the tool maker who have money in the bank, and suddenly their money in the bank just lost half of its purchasing value, they've been stolen from. You've technically stolen from them real wealth by inflating the currency. So that's what's really wrong about inflation. Usually it doesn't happen that quickly, but it's still theft all the same. Even if it's only 1 or 2% a year, it's wrong. Okay, but you can also have something called deflation, and this is where the supply of money is, relative to true wealth in the economy, the supply of money is decreased. And so this is a situation where the money seems to be becoming more valuable just because there's less of it to go around. You actually have like a currency shortage, so to speak. And this is wrong because what's going on there is it causes hoarding of money. People, the purpose of money is to make, the trading of wealth and the exchange of wealth more convenient. It's a convenience for us. So if you deflate the currency and the money becomes something that everybody wants to hoard as if it's intrinsically valuable by itself, then it's not serving its purpose. It's actually doing damage because then people go back to a barter system, which is like, a lot less convenient. And so it's really messed up, and it actually allows people who have large amounts of money in the bank to just sit on it and essentially accumulate wealth without having to do anything. Investing it in anything without, they're not working for the money and the money isn't working for them. It's just sitting there and gaining value for no good reason. So that's what's wrong with deflation. Now, the way to keep this from getting out of hand is if you have, a set value of currency for, a set number of goods. As wealth gets created, I'm using cattle as the explanation here. So as more and more gets added to the economy, you have to create or add new currency to the economy in proportion. So, as you keep adding more livestock here, in order to keep it from becoming a deflationary system, you have to keep adding currency. And this is it's not inflation because the currency that's being created is in proportion to the wealth that's being created. And this is how you would keep the economic system strong and healthy. Now, historically, one of the best ways of having an honest currency that doesn't inflate and deflate, beyond the natural fluctuations in the economy, is tying it to something that's also intrinsically valuable, such as silver or gold. By doing this, you can prevent someone with sinister or perhaps just, reckless intentions from, artificially inflating the currency and benefiting from it. So that the only inflation and deflation that occurs is going to be completely natural based on the market. So, when gold is being mined, you have a little bit of an inflation of gold as, even if it outpaces the other creation of wealth a little bit, it can only go so far. It's limited by natural, it takes effort to mine the gold and to refine it and to coin it into something recognizable. Whereas if it's like a paper currency, all you got to do is print it. Or like what is more common these days, they don't even bother to do that. They're just using electronic stuff, and they call it quantitative easing, where essentially they just log into their bank account, the people who create the money, and they just add zeros to their bank account, and then from there they loan it out and distribute it around in the economy. And it's disastrous because it's one way to inflate the currency. It literally costs them nothing, but they're able to add wealth to themselves because with it they can purchase real wealth. And it's just another form of theft that occurs regularly, not just in the United States. I mean, this is all over the world. This happens everywhere. And it's very wrong. And I think it's important that people understand it, because today you have a lot of politicians especially who talk about giving out money. We're just gonna, like, the government's just gonna give someone money as, either a benefit or just as what they would call as a way of, alleviating some of the problems with automation and stuff, because they're afraid people won't have jobs. But it's not good, because if you just start giving people money for no reason, if they haven't done anything to earn it, the money was created without any wealth to back it up, it's just going to inflate the currency. It's going to hurt those who have actually earned money and accumulated real wealth, and it's going to actually allow those who are getting the free money to essentially steal from everyone else. That's all it really is. It's just a big scam. So anyway, I hope this helps some people understand money, that money is not wealth, and money is a currency for our convenience to help us exchange wealth. And it's a good thing if it's managed correctly. But unfortunately, like many things today, it's not always managed correctly. So catch you on the next video.